Hello, everyone. My name is Akia Shepherd, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Hands-On, Minds-On, Digital Manipulatives. Our presenter today is Beth Galanti. And before we get started, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping. So during this webinar, I'll be writing you some helpful messages in the chat. And anytime that you have questions, you should see a button somewhere on your screen that says Q&A where you can type in your questions. Now, without further ado, take it away, Beth.
Thanks, Akia. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our webinar tonight of Hands-On, Minds-On. We're really glad to have you with us. I'm just going to start with a little bit about my background. I'm a former educator of intermediate grades. I was a mentor teacher and literacy lead and instructional coach supporting teachers. Now I'm a professional development specialist for SMART. I'm here to support you with how to use SMART solutions. So tonight I'm going to show you something I'm really excited about, how to use digital manipulatives that you make in SMART Notebook and deliver with SMART Learning Suite. So our objectives tonight, our goals are to learn how the tools that you can use to create those manipulatives in Notebook. And then once we've made them, we're going to learn how to share those manipulatives through student devices, through Smart Learning Suite Online. So let's get started talking about manipulatives. Yeah, how do you use them in the classroom? There's so many ways to use manipulatives. Obviously, math comes first to mind for me when I want my students to really get in there and explore and engage them. I would choose the appropriate manipulatives for that lesson.
I use manipulatives. I was a secondary science teacher, and I think it really helps my students visualize, those concepts and makes it easier for them to connect the concepts to the applications. But also as a secondary science teacher, it's one of my favorite grades that I taught was 6th grade. There were some challenges that came with using those manipulatives. That's a tongue twister sometimes. Yes. My main challenge, I would say, was misuse of those manipulatives. So times where they might have not been being used the way that I intended. So maybe at the beginning of the school year, you're still setting your class expectations and your culture, and you're seeing those manipulatives across the room. But also, I imagine that's true even in an elementary classroom where students are taking those hands-on manipulatives that everyone's sharing and touching and maybe even put it in their mouth. So
I mean, absolutely, you're right. A few instances come to mind of interesting ways students have used my lessons manipulatives. But yes, it does take a lot of routines to get the way we use our manipulatives properly as a procedure. So yes, I understand that manipulatives, how awesome they are, but they also do come with a lot of challenges for any grade. So I want to hear from all of you. How do you use manipulatives, and what are all the awesome ways you're using them, but what are also some challenges you've experienced using them? So let's see if I can reset this a little bit, float up, there we go. All right, all you'd have to do to join this conversation is open up a new window, a new browser, and you go to hellosmart.com. And once you get in hellosmart.com, you want to join as a guest, this lower button, because you're a guest in our webinar tonight. Thank you again. And it's going to ask you to put in a class ID. My class ID is 918918. So you type that in, 918918, and hit next. And then you'll be in our class participating. You'll be able to see the questions and type your answers to one of the two categories. And then we'll know how to refer to you when we're discussing your answers and sharing with each other. And I'm going to go back to my screen. Oh, we look like we already have someone joining. Excellent. A way that they use manipulatives. And you'll have two categories that you can answer. Two categories, one category for each question.
And again, the instructions to join Beth's class so that you're able to interact with us are in the chat, and I'll post it again. And in front of you, you should have a screen where you can type in your response. And underneath that, you have a drop-down menu where you can choose if it's a challenge or if it's a way that you use your manipulatives, and you can just send your response here on the screen so that you can join our discussion.
Excellent. Thanks for repeating that, Akia. We have a lot of participation so far. I love seeing that you're taking part in the conversation. So let's see what we have. We have building words with word onsets. Excellent. This is one of my favorite ways to use the digital manipulatives with that we've created in Smart Notebook. We have, it just gives me the first three of your names, so I'm not sure your whole name now, but I use number styles and counting beans. Definitely, those are just tried and true with the tiles and for counters. We have, I use manipulatives to give students opportunity to solve problems in a concrete way. Definitely, we need that concrete step is so important. Someone else uses them in math and science. Yes, other content areas besides just math. That's really key. Number work and building words. Absolutely. Thank you. So we all use them in tons of ways. Let's go over and start talking about some of the challenges that come with them. Not having the correct manipulatives. Exactly. Like you have all these so many ideas and then you're limited to what you have. Setting the expectations. Yeah. So the free play. Oh yes, they're all over the room. They definitely, when you get to those little ones that they've rolled off and you're picking those up, and you got to have a really strong relationship with that custodian, right? Students take them home. Yeah, we love that they want to use them at home, but also then we lose them for classroom use. Yeah, sometimes they can be messy, and it's like there's the good classroom mess, but also it can be a much. They do take a lot of time to pass out. I definitely agree that there is that transitional, like passing out of materials. We want it to be seamless, but not always, right? And yes, just like Akia mentioned, don't they just find the most creative ways to explore with these manipulatives? Yeah. So the concrete is important, but hopefully with the rest of our webinar, we'll show you how when in Smart Notebook making the manipulatives digital will solve most of these challenges. Probably looks like all of the ones we have here. So I have a really quick quote here. One of my educational heroes becoming a teacher is Marilyn Burns. She's a great advocate for the use of manipulatives. You can go ahead and read this yourself. But I just want to highlight a word that really stood out to me was the word grab. And that just what an action verb for, participating in a lesson and teaching, right? We want our kids to really grab onto the learning. We want them to make it their own and get it hard in their brains. So I really appreciate how she advocates for students participating with the manipulatives. And just a little background learning theory about why to use manipulatives, why we use them, because it really takes that concrete stage where kids are moving to learn those operations and those concepts with not just math, but learning them with physical, tangible objects. Then they move into the representation phase where they aren't having them tangible in their hands, but those same objects are now being represented with something that they draw or something that they have on a screen, like making these dots as an array instead of having them right here physically to touch. Yeah, like a drawing.
Era, it's really reminded me of maybe where students would draw out diagrams or like tally marks, or those some other examples?
That's exactly it. Just something that they can draw to write down to mark, and pictorially, that's all in the representation phase. And that helps them have a bridge to this abstract where we want them to get, where we think of where they can just do mental math or they can write it down that isn't directly what it is. So it's a symbol or a number, digits, and they really understand what this means because they've started off with concrete, moved to representation, and now can do it abstractly. So how would we have them use these digital manipulatives instead of real tangible manipulatives? Well, you have a sheet if you are in your hellosmart.com that you can just start playing with. This is just one example. This is just a math example. So we have our fraction bars here. Go ahead and start trying to drag and move. This is your page to explore, just like we'd want our children to explore. They'd have this page on their device. And unlike these in real life with it, which if you were a math teacher of primary or intermediate, you know these pieces can get quite small and slippery and slide off the desks, and you are a lucky one if you end that class period with all these 1/12 back in the baggie. So now you don't need to worry about that. They can make equivalent fractions and compare and add and subtract. A lot of versatility here. What do you think, Akia?
When I look at this page, one, it reminds me, I know I said I was a secondary teacher, but I was a TA for a second grade class, and I remember preparing a manipulatives like this, and we were using paper, so we had to spend hours cutting them all up just to see so many of them go. So I really like this page, but also just jumping back to my time in high school as a chemistry teacher, I've seen manipulatives that look just like this. So it has the rectangular shapes, but instead of fractions, it has information that has to do with stoichiometry. So it might say formula weight or mole to mole ratio to help the student solve the problems. So I hope that, as we look at these examples, we could kind of see our own content in it and how it can help our students, deepen their understanding of different concepts. And for anyone who joined later and they weren't able to join into Beth's class and you want to experience these handouts, I'm going to post again the directions so that you can join her class.
Yes, you're right. There's so much when you look at this that you can just start sparking, to mind your content area, and oh, these could be different tape lengths for different values, and they don't have to necessarily be fractions. Or I could tweak this a little bit if I had this in my notebook. That's exactly what we're going to get to. But we don't want to just, cater to the math folk and keep it all about manipulatives for math, because math gets a lot of attention for manipulatives, but we also have manipulatives for the ELA folks. So there's lots of ways that ELA teachers are having students build and construct and manipulate with parts of words, parts of sentences. So the one you are able to play right now is Onsets and Rhymes, and you can just start making words. Just get in there and start building and having fun the same way that we would want our students to, making all these words. Just being as creative and exploratory as you can. That's what we want our students to do. Seeing patterns and definitely just taking those risks of trying. And then being able to, to fully adjust, just like they would for the paper sorts and other things that you would have to spend this time cutting out for them and then cutting out after they lose this one. And if you want to check how they're doing, you would walk around, right, and look at their desks to see their sorts. But now, right now, I could just click back to my dashboard and I would see how my students are doing. So let's check on Albert. Looks like he's dragging a lot and making these, and wow, he's doing a great job. I can use my tools over here to give him some feedback and maybe give him a little star on this one, because that's one of our snap words for the week, or something like, oh, wow, you found one of your snap words. Excellent. And I would verbally want to go do that to him as well. But, kids get that little encouragement right there immediate in the moment. So I'm glad you guys are building in here. Thanks, Albert, for participating. So you're probably wondering, like, wow, how did you just build these? So yeah, how do we make these? How do we use a notebook to make these? So there's a really awesome tool that can help us make these. If you join me back in your Zoom window, so you're going to come out of your Hello Smart window and join me back in your Zoom window, and let's go into Notebook together and make a page for digital manipulatives that my students can use. So I'm first going to start with thinking, my lesson on perimeter and area is coming up. So I want a space for them to build, not just see examples on the page and tap and count. I really want them to be creative and build some and test and explore. So I'm going to grab the shapes and start with a rectangle as a work pad, like a work mat that I want them to build on. I want to give them some organization. So I'm going to make the background of that pad light colored with a nice defined border so they know exactly where I'm going to be looking for these figures. I also want to keep them focused that they do have to not just build, but also be calculating area and perimeter. So I'm going to grab the shape, the rectangle again, but this time I'm going to make it pop out on the page by choosing a lighter color and a darker line. And I'm going to give them some spaces near the bottom after they build. I want them to actually tell me what the perimeter and area are. So I'm going to give them our little symbol for perimeter and area. And now this is, let's put it right there, nice and neat. And this is where I want them to ultimately tell me what they've calculated after they were creative and built. But now I need some manipulatives for them to build with. So I'm going to go back into shape, and make them a little bank to hold their manipulatives. I'm a very organized person and matchy. So let's make them a little bank. And now here's the manipulatives I want. Well, for perimeter and area, I'm knowing that they use square units. So I'm going to make them some bold popping out units. And I'm using the square because it's square units and it's just easy to diagonally drag, and that's a perfect square for me. Didn't have to cut or wait in line at the copier to get these pieces. So now I'm going to challenge them by using the triangle to make those little half units, and I have a habit of forgetting to make this one white. So let's fill it white, the fill color. And now I have these that I want my students to use, but it's just these. And I really want to make sure that they're able to drag and build as many as their creative brains want them to build. So I'm going to click on this magic arrow on the corner. And there's tons of options that I can use for these images and shapes. But the one I'm going to show you today is Infinite Cloner. When I click that, I can now move and drag off as many of these as I want to make my design and my figure to calculate my perimeter and area. I'm going to do the same thing to this one. I just click that down arrow, went to Infinite Cloner, and now this is cloned for as many times as the student wants to. And there's one last step. Because I'm going to have my students dragging these, I want to make sure that the parts I don't want them to drag don't move. So I'm going to click on, here, let me move the faces, okay? I'm going to click on the things I don't want to move, and once it's highlighted, I'm going to grab that down arrow, and again, just another awesome thing it can do, this down arrow with all my choices, is I go down to lock, and I'm going to choose lock in place because I just want it just stuck there to the spot. I also want this bank locked to the spot, locked in place. And both of these little answer spots, I definitely want those locked as well. Lock in place. All right, so now that I've built this, my students will be able to drag, build, and count and highlight and do their perimeter and area for me. So here's what it will look like once I've uploaded it to my lesson in down here now. And when I look at it, it looks great. I can't wait for them to start playing. So I'm gonna make this interactive now by clicking on my classes, little bodies over here. And two choices pop up for me. I have individual handout activity that students can use on their own screen, their own workspace for themselves, or collaborative workspace activity. And this is for if I want multiple students to work on the same page together. But since I want them all to be creative and have their own freedom to make their own figures, and I also want to quickly look back and check at their own numbers if they can correctly do perimeter and area, I'm going to choose individual handout. And just like that, this is a page that my students can play and start manipulating. So if you were in your Hello Smart window, if you can get right back, you can immediately start playing. But you got the idea from the other slides that you can just start dragging and building. This is just, you know, brings that engagement and fun back into something that would have been, you know, just a little bit expected. And, you know, we always want our students to be surprised and having fun. So yeah, I'm already having fun building right here myself. So
Beth, really quickly, while you
Yes.
were, and I might just be a teacher geek,
Yes.
but I know you talked about locking in place. While you were creating that resource in Smart Notebook, my eyes were like locked in place on the screen. I was just watching in awe. So that was really cool, really easy for you to build. And, it's amazing to think that it's just that simple for you to build that in Smart Notebook, upload it to Smart Learning Suite Online, change it to a handout, and now it's accessible to all of your students.
Yes, there's so much in Smart Notebook that can use to build and make it exactly how you want it to look. And then there's different options that your students can do on this page. I can see that Anna is already building something. She's putting two together. That's exactly what I wanted them to discover on their own before me telling them that the halves made a whole. And she's also using the pen I see to write an answer here. She could do the text and type it. I really like how she's coming along exploring, and that's exactly what I would want my students to see. And I could even give them feedback after their answer, like, oh, don't forget that it's units squared for area. So this is a really interactive page, and I can also give them those really quick feedback, and I can say that I just love this. Great job, Anna. Yes, it's almost what we would do in class with real manipulatives, but much easier and just infinite, like the tool is called. Now I'd like to challenge you all. So what we did today that I think you'll be ready to go try, hopefully, is first to go into your Smart Notebook and create any shape like I did, or search for an image that you want to infinitely clone, and click on that. Once you highlight it, click on that little drop down arrow and try infinite cloner for something. Next, I challenge you to, when you're in Smart Learning Suite Online, convert one of your pages to an interactive handout to make it so the students can actually drag and manipulate on their device. And when you're ready to level up, you've tried those other ones and you mastered them, and now you're ready to level up, I would challenge you to maybe put a few manipulatives on one page and let the students choose which one suits the task best and their learning style best. And we'd love to hear about it when you do. So if you could tag us at SmartPLN or #SmartChampion, so we can see all the amazing work your students are doing. For refreshers on any of that, we have look at that. We have this resources page. And if you, Akia's going to put this in the chat for you to have all these links about a quick guide to remind you how to use Infinite Cloner. And we also have a quick guide on how to get those lessons, those awesome lessons we created in Smart Notebook, into SLSO. And another quick reminder of when I press that button to turn it into an individual handout. It's just really quick steps. I've also included today's notebook file if you had way too much fun with those fraction bars and perimeter and area and making words. You can click that file and then you can download that or put it into your own SLSO if you just want to play around more. And I'd really love for you to join the next webinars we have going up if you enjoyed this one. We have one coming up very soon that shows you way more tricks about building in Smart Notebook, and then all the benefits of why you send it to Smart Learning Suite Online. And then you can register. So those are those last links. And there we go. We would love to hear how you are having smart solutions in your classroom. So you can tag us on Twitter. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and we can just use #SmartChampion and see how you're using all these tools.
Thank you so much, Beth. I really enjoyed all that great information. Again, the link for the resources has been dropped in the chat. So I hope everyone enjoys accepting that a challenge and using manipulatives with their students.
Yes.
Thank you so much.